I'm up in the building. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. There we go, there we go, there we go. All right. It is, of course, unapologetically QI entering the building. All right. So, oh, 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 oh. One sec. It took me a minute. This live was set up for yesterday. Of course, y'all know that me and Ness have the same birthday. So, I had a small infinity for that. Plus, I'm Team Leo. And, I like a success story. I like, when I see somebody coming from adversity and make their way out. I like a success story. To me, that's inspirational, that's motivation, and such on and so on. However, I had heard about, well, let me go here first. I'm subscribed to Ness. And so I saw someone that she shared, right? Came from Nothing podcast. Now, I had been following Came From Nothing podcast for a long time. I'm still subscribed, and I think I need to go ahead and unsubscribe. All right, now let me tell you what I know about Came From Nothing podcast. Uh, I started following him because, the J for K situation led me to like want to deep dive into some history and some knowledge about like Chicago and different things that was going on. So I started following a lot of the Chicago people, the Chicago story, and eventually it led to the FBG Duck and the drill rap scene. Okay. And so after King Von's departure, a character came onto the streets, Came From Nothing podcast. And he was talking about the fact that he grew up in O Block in Chicago, which is Parkway Gardens, the same place that Michelle Obama, lived when she was young, when she was a child, right? Which was totally different from the environment because I think they used to be decent when she lived there. However, they are not the same, and they call them O Block, right? Okay, so Came From Nothing, grew up in O Block, and he was friends with King Von. He was friends with Wooski. He was friends with a lot of the BDs that lived in O Block. And so he began to come out and tell the stories about King Von and his affiliation and the things that they had done. And he also, talked about Wooski and a lot of the other characters that he had known from O Block or, known from the Chicago South Side area. All right. So, you know, that was my primary reason for following him. And he also got a lot of interviews on a lot of, the channels that generally cover the drill rap. Uh, I can't think of his original name right now, but I know his channel is Came From Nothing podcast. That's just how long I've stopped following him. And I saw his conversion, right? Because he used to speak about um, King Von, the music industry, and how demonic it was, and and he was using religion. And I know that he's a part of some type of religious organization. That is white based because he moved from Chicago to like Arizona. How I know is because a lot of those BDs, they was threatening him and looking for him because, they felt like he was talking too much. because this was before Lil Durk actually got locked up, locked up. All right. So when she shared that on the wall, I immediately replied, and I was like, "You're following this crazy dude? This dude is crazy." All right. And we also know that St. James went to the Seattle trip with Ness and the others. Okay, so I'm sure that she follows St. James in return, and she also mentioned Cruiser, which we know she came from the B sector and she converted uh fully over into the church sector. And Cruiser has always been honest. It's like she loves to mess, and we know that the church sector is very, very messy, like messy to the point where it can land you in legal trouble. Because basically what the church sector has been about, because when I initially started in the B sector, I had started covering some of those topics and different things like that, like where pastors, preachers, bishops, and deacons and stuff were getting exposed, the popular ones, right? And I also was a moderator for King James. I followed Larry Reed and Conscious TV. And basically, I would spin off of them in a person name or a channel named Dawson's Creek. So I would spin off of them, like so much that, Brianna was like, "Why are you always talking about the church stuff or whatever?" No, I was just talking about how people use religion and they manipulate people, because it was dealing with a lot of amongst the youth and different things of that nature. And I felt like it was very important, because I'm always the one that I don't like when something that should be for good is used for bad or wrong. I don't like the misleading of people, the manipulation of people. And believe it or not, I came up in the church scene myself, so like I saw and experienced a lot of things firsthand. Even in my lifestyle now, I play drums for churches and different things of that nature. So I'm quite familiar with the church hurt. And that was a lot of my content. It was about church hurt. Um, and King Giles, church hurt. And I also followed William McRae and, Andrew Caldwell and things of that nature, right? So I know how messy that sector is. It's even messier now than it was when I was following it. So when I saw that she was following him, which he's not a part of that sector, he sort of does his own thing. I sort of sensed that there could be trouble, but I just didn't expect, what I saw yesterday. And also, like, I missed that live. I saw it, and I kept saying I need to go back and catch the replay, but I never did the first live. Now, and I heard about, what had occurred on that first live through Sincere Saidas, where she was talking about it, and she even showed videos of where, there's a massive religious hustle on social media, and showed like some of the people who were starting cults. Okay, so um, it concerned me in sincere, so I was a little prepared. So yesterday I dropped down, and I'm a super empath, and that means I'm very acute to energy and spirits and stuff like that. Um, So I dropped down in Nessa's chat and I spoke. Normally, Nessa speak to me within blah, blah, blah. After her commentary, she's going to go down a list and she's going to speak to people, but she didn't speak this time. I might have stayed for like 20 minutes, but I couldn't stay any longer than that because my hair began to stand up on my head, which means that, I was receiving that heavy negative energy. Now, me myself, I've been down spiritual paths and things like that. A lot of spiritual journeys. Like I said, like I was deeply rooted in Christianity because of my family, and I converted to spirituality, but it was a long process. So I know how the process goes, and then you go through it several times, and then you're like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. um, so I said all that to say that also one of the things that before Ness left, and I think this was around the time when her and Jadon first got into it, Jadon exposed Ness for having either schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. And Ness came out eventually and she talked about, the fact that she was taking her medicine. Okay, now before she went to Vegas, she stated that she got off her medicine because with a lot of that type of medicine, it causes weight gain, right? So that would explain the weight gain. And, right now she's not just on, this spiritual journey, but she's also on a weight loss journey. Now, let me start with that first. Before, like, it does you no good to have a super body and to look good if your mind is in disarray. It does you no good. And I worked in the mental health field. Now, I'm not a therapist. I'm required to say that. I am a mandate reporter, but I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist. I can't diagnose anyone, and I don't. Basically, I listen to what people say, and I can sort of gather things from that. But if it's true what Jadon exposed with the schizoaffective disorder, which is a mixture between bipolar and schizophrenia, the only difference is like with schizoaffective, it's like when a person is stressed out or, it has to be something major going on at the time for them to go into the psychosis. Now, with people who are schizophrenic, they're always pretty much in and out or always in the psychosis. And we've seen, schizophrenics because they talk to each other. I mean, they talk to themselves and hear, they're hearing voices and different things, you know. And so that brings me to this point about hyper religion. So let me tell you this quick story, which I, told it yesterday or told it on Trish's channel. And while I worked in the mental health field, I would come across people who had, they were in a recovery process and different things. And there was one particular person that talked about their bout with hyper religion. They lived in a small town. This was a non-Black person as well. This person stated that, they would get up every day. They lived with their parents. They were younger, I believe. And they got up every day. And in that small town, they used to walk from door to door, knocking on the door, saying, let me talk to you about Jesus. And all of the neighbors and stuff were so concerned and stuff that they called their parents. And so eventually, they got like the 5150 Bakers Act or whatever. And they got, you know, um, hospitalized and, ended up recovering. But also, like when you see people out on in the city and stuff with them signs and the bull horns and stuff, a lot of times this is what you call hyper religious behavior that comes from psychosis that is a part of several mental health diagnoses, but definitely it's like a psychosis due to mental illness. Now I'm just gonna give y'all some quick information about that. Because, and while I'm, getting this together, let me just say this. It's hard to speak on this. Like, that's what took me so long. It is hard to speak on this because we all, like, I don't condone anybody's choice, spiritual choice. I don't want to condone anybody coming to, God, anybody trying to do right in their life. So that's not what this is about. This is just about the fact that, due to the fact that, you stop taking your medicine, it concerns me. So I want to say, like, what if it's not God talking, but your mind crying for help? Hyperreligion isn't deep faith. It's when religion becomes overwhelming, obsessive, even controlling. Some people start believing I'm chosen above everyone, God is commanding me, or they live in a consistent fear of punishment over every small thing. This can be linked to bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, OCD, even neurological conditions. Not a lack of faith, but a mental health signal. Real spirituality brings peace, clarity, balance, not fear, chaos, or losing touch with reality. Protect your mind, your spirit. Your spirit deserves stability. So I also want to read. So that pretty much covered it because I didn't want to make this long. Let me just make sure. According to my little notes here. Yeah. So this is basically like going to be a very quick live. And my message is not just to Ness, but my message is to people who are close to Ness. I mean, we're all observing. We're going to see. We hope for the best, right? But I hope this is not a religious hustle. And um, I think I would believe it a lot better if I knew that she was taking her medication or she was on the proper medication. So, like, if we begin to see, and this is like I said to Ness's close circle, Ness declines because we got to look. A lot of people are looking at it from a social media aspect. However, I can see their perspective or point of view with the religious hustles and different things, or trying to bridge into the religious content. But as well, I'm going to say a spiritual journey is hard. So when you come out here, especially if you come out here judging other people and being a little on the extreme side, you got to know that that's going to come back to you tenfold. As well, as well, you got to be ready to handle it. Because there's some people out here that are real, like they know the Bible. They grew up in families that had pastors, preachers. They grew up in church. So you just can't come out here calling yourself a leader or, like you're trying to start a cult or lead the masses if you're not up on your your biblical game. As well, if we begin to see her decline, because we got to realize that this is not just social media is one aspect, but you also got to think about her home life and the fact that she has a job. So if it's a psychosis due to not taking her medicine, it could, a lot of people with schizoaffective disorder or possibly schizophrenia, they can end up in jail. They can end up in a mental health hospital. They can end up losing their job. They can end up homeless. So if we begin to see, some other activities and things like that, I would just advise and hope that, the closest friends, they're not, drinking the Kool-Aid too thick or too much to the point where they would begin to tell her to take her medication. or go and get reevaluated, seek some help, because like I said, like having a magic body and all this kind of stuff does nothing for you if your mind is not right. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm not, trying to judge or anything like that. But what concerned me was not taking the medication and the fact that, like the introduction to her change was so extreme. And like I said, I'm a super empath. And, just being in the chat, trying to, understand or feel where she was coming from and stuff like that. The energy was very dark, negative, and heavy. So all I'm gonna say is we're gonna, for those of you that pray, we're gonna pray. For those, we're just gonna hope for the best. But like, if I just need people to know that mental illness is real, and you can't. They give you medication for a reason, to balance you out, to make you more stable or whatever. And so if we see her decline, I just need people to know that y'all need to tell her to, or possibly do some wellness checks or something. But by all means, that she needs to get back on her medication. And pretty much that is all that I have to say on that topic. It took me a long time to do it. I didn't really want to do it because, I liked I like Ness. Um, I like Ness, and you know, I wanted to see that success story, but so I'm just hoping that everything pans out, well for her, and that by being off her medication, that it does not cause her any harm or any chaos or dysfunction in her life. So until next time. It is me, unapologetically QI, and I'm going to exit the building. Peace to all, and I'm out. Let me take a few minutes. What's up? What's up, Halito? Halito. Or Oseo. That's to Copper. What's up, BA Superstar? What's up? What's good? And my girl Dovey is in the building with the scooters. Scooting along. All right. Well, I thank all of y'all for coming through. Y'all smash that like button. NAB Uncensored. What's good? All right. I thank everybody for coming through. Y'all like and share. And like I said, we're gonna lift Ness up in prayer. We're gonna lift Ness up in positive energy. We're gonna hope for the best. But me personally, I would be I would feel a lot better if I knew that she was taking her medication. And as well, uh, we just got to pay attention to them signs and symptoms. And I really hope that the people who are close to her in her inner circle, if they start seeing things go in a disarray, will tell her or try to advise her to, go back to the doctor, get back on her medicine, or, like possibly, like have, look at possibly having to do some wellness checks. But like I said, until next time, this is me, peace, love, and hair grease, and all that good stuff. And unapologetically, QI is exiting the building. Peace, and I'm out.